Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Hey English Podcast, where we dive into all things English to help you become more confident speakers. My name's Philip, and I'm super excited to have you with me today. Now, I know that learning English can be challenging, especially when you're not a native speaker. Trust me, you're not alone. One of the biggest hurdles people face is expanding their vocabulary. That's exactly why today's episode is all about how to improve your English vocabulary as a non-native speaker. Whether you're preparing for an English exam, trying to hold better conversations, or simply want to sound more fluent, increasing your vocabulary is one of the most important steps you can take. And don't worry, we're going to make this fun and easy. We'll go over some tips, tricks, and useful strategies you can start using today. Plus, as always, I'll be explaining some English phrases, grammar rules, and even a few idioms along the way, so stick around. All right, let's dive in and discover how to take your English vocabulary to the next level. So, why is building your vocabulary so important? Well, think of your vocabulary like a toolbox. The more tools you have, the more things you can do with them. In the same way, the more words you know, the easier it becomes to express yourself in different situations. You see, knowing basic words is a great start, but if you really want to sound fluent and natural, it's important to go beyond the basics. Let's say you're describing something that's nice. Sure, nice works. But what if you could say it was fantastic, brilliant, or even breathtaking? Doesn't that just sound more interesting and specific? This is what vocabulary allows you to do. It gives you more options, more precision, and makes you sound more a confident woman speaking English instead of repeating the same words over and over again. You can pick words that really to say. And here's the thing. A bigger vocabulary doesn't just help with speaking, it also improves your listening, reading, and even writing skills. When you know more words, you'll understand conversations better, catch more details when reading, and your writing will feel more sophisticated. The cool part is that learning new words isn't just about memorizing them. It's about understanding how and when to use them. That's where the magic happens. And the more words you know, the better you'll become at forming clear, meaningful sentences. You might even start noticing how your sentence structure changes. That's because as your vocabulary grows, you naturally begin to organize your thoughts in a more effective way. So, expanding your vocabulary isn't just about sounding smart. It's about making communication smoother, more effective, and ultimately, more enjoyable. All right, so now that we understand why vocabulary is so important, let's talk about some practical ways you can start expanding yours today. The good news is, you don't need to memorize a dictionary to improve your vocabulary. There are much simpler, more effective ways to do it. One of the best ways is to read regularly. Now, I know that might sound obvious, but trust me, it works wonders. Whether it's books, articles, blogs, or even social media posts, reading exposes you to new words in their natural context. And when you see words in action, it's much easier to understand how they're used. You could start with topics you enjoy, whether it's travel, technology, or even food, because when you're interested in what you're reading, you're more likely to remember the words. Another great way to boost your vocabulary is by using apps like Duolingo or Memrise. These apps are fun, interactive, and they introduce new words in bite-sized pieces, so you can learn without feeling overwhelmed. Plus, they often come with daily practice reminders, which is super helpful if you're trying to stay consistent. But here's a little secret that often gets overlooked. When you're learning a new word, don't just focus on that one word. Look for its synonyms and antonyms too. That way, you're not only adding one word to your vocabulary, you're adding a whole set of related words that you can use in different situations. For example, if you learn the word happy, try to also learn words like joyful, cheerful, and even the opposite, like sad or melancholy. This gives you a full range of options to express yourself more precisely. Something else I highly recommend is to keep a vocabulary journal. Every time you come across a new word, write it down, along with its meaning, and maybe even a sentence that helps you remember how to use it. Studies show that writing things down helps reinforce memory, so it's a simple but powerful tool for improving your vocabulary. Also, try to learn words that are relevant to your daily life. If you work in a specific field, focus on the vocabulary that's commonly used there. if you're studying for a test, make sure you're familiar with the types of words that might appear in the exam. By focusing on words that are useful to you, you're more likely to remember them and put them into practice. And lastly, don't forget about spoken language. Listen to podcasts, watch TV shows or movies in English, and pay attention to the way people use words in conversation. You'll pick up tons of new vocabulary just by hearing how native speakers talk in everyday situations. Plus, you'll learn common expressions and idioms that you might not find in textbooks. So, whether it's through reading, using apps, keeping a journal, or listening to conversations, the key is to expose yourself to new words regularly. And the more you use them, the more they'll stick. It's like building muscle. The more you practice, the stronger your vocabulary becomes. Now here's something that often makes learning new vocabulary a lot easier. Learning words in context. What do I mean by that? Well, instead of just memorizing words in isolation, it's much more effective to see how they're used in real-life situations. When you learn words in context, they become a part of your natural speech, and that's when real progress happens. Think about it this way. If you just memorize the word run, you know what it means, but how do you use it? When you see it in a sentence like, "She runs every morning to stay fit," you understand not just the meaning, but also how it's used with other words like every morning or to stay fit. The word suddenly makes more sense because it's in a situation that you can picture. This is why watching movies or TV shows, listening to podcasts, or reading stories in English is so powerful. You're picking up new words naturally because you're seeing them in action. You're not just learning what a word means. You're learning when and how to use it in real conversations. For example, let's take the phrase, hit the books. If you just learn the words hit and books separately, you'd never guess that hit the books actually means to start studying hard. But when you hear someone say, "I've got an exam tomorrow, so I need to hit the books," it immediately clicks because the context helps you understand the meaning. The same goes for things like prepositions or adjectives. Learning them in context helps you figure out how they fit into a sentence. You'll naturally start to understand when to say on the table versus in the box, or when to use beautiful versus gorgeous. These are the kinds of details that become clear when you see words in context. So, the next time you're reading or listening to English, don't just focus on individual words. Pay attention to how the words fit together in sentences, how they're used in conversation, and the kind of situations they appear in. This way, you're not just building your vocabulary, you're learning how to actually use that vocabulary in real life. Speaking of learning vocabulary in context, there's something else that can really help you sound more fluent, using idioms, phrases, and collocations. These are the little pieces of language that native speakers use all the time, and if you can get comfortable with them, you'll notice your English starts to sound a lot more natural. Let's start with idioms. Idioms are expressions where the meaning isn't obvious from the individual words. For example, the phrase break the ice doesn't literally mean breaking something made of ice. It means starting a conversation or making people feel comfortable in an awkward situation. When you use idioms correctly, you immediately sound more fluent and in tune with how native speakers really talk. Now on to phrases. These are combinations of words that are often used together. You could say something like make a decision, but what you hear more commonly in everyday English is come to a decision. That's a phrase you might not find in a textbook, but it's one that native speakers use all the time. So, by learning these common phrases, you start to speak in a way that sounds less robotic and more like how people actually talk. And then we have collocations, which are just words that naturally go together. For example, we say heavy rain, not strong rain, or make a mistake, not do a mistake. These word pairings might seem small, but they make a big difference in how fluent you sound. Knowing which words fit together helps your sentences flow more smoothly, and it makes your speech feel more connected. The key to mastering idioms, phrases, and collocations is the same as learning vocabulary: context. Pay attention to how they're used in conversations, movies, or books. You'll start to notice patterns, and once you get the hang of them, you can begin using them naturally in your own conversations. So, next time you hear a native speaker say something like kick the bucket or a piece of cake, take note of it. These little expressions are what make English fun, and they can really level up your speaking skills. Now, here's the final piece of the puzzle: practice. It sounds simple, but it's the most important step. Learning new words and phrases is great, but if you don't use them, they won't stick. The more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll feel using your expanded vocabulary in real conversations. Try to incorporate new words into your daily life. Whether you're chatting with friends, writing an email, or even thinking to yourself, find ways to use the vocabulary you've learned. The goal is to make these words a natural part of your speech, so they come to you without even thinking. It's like building a habit. The more you use them, the stronger your language skills become. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's part of the process. Every time you use a new word, even if it's not perfect, you're reinforcing your learning. Over time, these words will feel just as natural as the ones you've known for years. So, remember, read, listen, learn, and most importantly, practice. It's the best way to make sure all these new words, idioms, and phrases become part of your everyday English. So, there you have it. Building your English vocabulary as a non-native speaker might seem like a big task at first, but with the right approach, it can be fun and incredibly rewarding. Remember, it's not about learning every word in the dictionary. It's about making small, steady improvements every day. Whether it's through reading, using apps, learning words in context, or practicing idioms and phrases, the key is to stay curious and consistent. Every new word you learn brings you one step closer to fluency, and before you know it, you'll find yourself expressing your thoughts more confidently and clearly. Thank you for joining me today. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more tips on improving your English. Keep practicing, keep pushing yourself, and most importantly, enjoy the journey. Your English is getting better every day.